One of the things that struck me in that research is the fact that they said that an average African cannot think and plan for more than 1 year. Okay, he said that the best of us can do 3 months or maybe 6 months. Anywhere you find an African who has a plan that is lasting for 1 year, then you are seeing an extraordinary African. What the book was trying to say is that we are short-term thinkers, okay? And that will also affect how intergenerational or transgenerational our vision becomes. Today we are looking at the topic Built to Last, Leadership That Can Be Trusted. Let me say that if today is your first time of joining this conversation, this should be the 8th day that we are having this leadership transformation series, and the previous conversations is available on our YouTube. Transformers Global LC is our YouTube channel. I will encourage you to go back and listen to some of the previous teachings. Each teaching is designed that you are going to take out something personally for yourself, irrespective of whether you were in the last session or not. So if today is your first time, don't worry, it's going to be a good session for you as well, okay? But to get the full package of the conversation that we've been having, I will encourage you to go to our YouTube channel and you'll be able to get some of our previous sessions, okay? So today we are going to also be, taking our conversation from the life and principle of Joshua, okay? The principles that Joshua lived by, to me, I believe is a lesson for us today, not just a story of yesterday, but a lesson of today. Joshua is one of the key leadership figures in the Bible that inspire me. And one of the reasons I take a lot of principles that Joshua, showed us through his life, and character is because of where he started as a leader, which is going to be similar to many of us in terms of, our leadership impact. Okay, Joshua started as a follower serving under Moses. Okay, but one day Moses was no more, and the mantle of leadership had to, fall on Joshua. So Joshua made a transition from being a follower to a leader, and not just being any kind of leader, but a leader with impact. Okay, many of us will, at some point in our life, find ourselves where we are going to make transition from following or leading under someone to, providing leadership, providing vision, direction, and there's a lot that we can glean from the life of Joshua. Okay. And why this teaching is particularly important to me is that why every good leader starts as a good follower, not every good follower turns out to be a great leader. So Joshua is an example of how someone can begin as a follower, continue to grow, and then become a future leader with impact, a future leader, a visionary leader with results. Okay, so let me say that Joshua's life, experiences, successes, as well as his failures provide a rich secret for transition from follower to a great leader. Let me also say that this is not just about people who are starting out in leadership. It's also a way to evaluate your leadership, whether you have been a leader for maybe the past 5 years, the past 10 years, or whether you have been a leader all your life. It's also an opportunity for you to evaluate your leadership, and then to make sure that you are driving your success towards impact. Okay, so the main theme for today is built to last. Okay, and let me start by asking, what does it mean to be built to last? Okay, from the context of this teaching, from my understanding, it might mean different things for different people, but built to last in the context that we are going to be having this conversation today, it's not just about having a momentary influence. Okay, we are talking about sustainable impact. Okay, building a vision that outlives you. Okay, so it lasts beyond you. In our previous conversations, I remember mentioning that when God gives a man a vision, God is thinking generationally. Okay, so no vision is given for a single generation. Every vision is given to be passed down. The scripture I use to bring that context is when the Bible says that the righteous man leaves wealth to his children's children up to a fourth generation. Usually, when we look at that scripture, we look at it from the context of riches, wealth. We are made to understand that, a righteous man leaves wealth for his children's children up to a fourth generation. But for me, I believe that beyond wealth, there are resources that are transferred which are intangible. Okay? Abraham did not necessarily transfer wealth to Isaac. Isaac did not necessarily transfer wealth to Jacob. But there is a vision that has been transferred from Abraham to Isaac, from Isaac to Jacob, and from Jacob to the 12 ones of Jacob, who became the 12 tribes of Israel. So that means that no human being on earth will be able to actualize his vision in a lifetime. Okay? It means that vision must be generational. It's something that we have not been taught well in Africa, where you see people build vision and it dies with them. Okay? Simply because they don't understand how to build a vision to last. They don't understand how to build a vision to be generational. Okay? So we always view vision in the context of our generation, in the context of me. So people rise and fall with their vision. And today we struggle to find cities built by Africa. We struggle to find development. We struggle to find, things that we can look back and say, okay, this is what, we have left behind as a black man, because most times we don't think generationally. I also mentioned a book. It's a study I read so many, years ago when I was presenting a conversation on the power of the mind. And one thing I read about Africans, it was an ethnocentric study of the African mind. A book that was, written to try to give an x-ray of how a black man thinks. One of the things that struck me in that research is the fact that they said that an average African cannot think and plan for more than 1 year. Okay? They said that the best of us can do 3 months or maybe 6 months. Anywhere you find an African who has a plan that is lasting for 1 year, then you are seeing an extraordinary African. What the book was trying to say is that we are short-term thinkers, okay? And that will also affect how intergenerational or transgenerational our vision becomes. And, whenever I look at it, sometimes we even get angry. Are these studies true? Are these studies not some sort of, stereotyping Africans and trying to, build up an image that we are not? But when you look at our generation, when you look at our communities, when you look at our schools, when you look at, every city that is governed by a black man in Africa, you can see that there are similarities, okay? You struggle to find individuals with long-term vision. Okay, that is where we started this conversation about having a 7-year plan for your life or a 100-year plan for your life. The best of us, most times, even in this conversation, if I ask us to raise our hands, you will see that many of us are struggling to put together a 1-year plan. Okay, and that is why we run cities without plan. We run nations without plan. There is no vision. There is no dream. There is nothing we are building, because our mind is not designed to think generationally. And that is also a key aspect of the conversations that we are having. One of the things I want you to take out of this conversation is that I want you to begin to train your mind. It is not natural to you, but the mind can be trained to begin to think generationally, to begin to think beyond yourself, to begin to think beyond your generation. And that is when you now start looking at, how do I build things to last? Okay? So it's not just about building a business that gives you money, that you employ 50 people, and you die a successful person. No, we are asking you to build a business that even in the next 4th generation, those businesses are still going to be there, because somebody is thinking beyond their own time to a time that they will not be existing in. And that is why if you travel outside Nigeria, it's easy to find. I once walked into a store in UK, just a supermarket, not something big, not something powerful. and they were celebrating 100 years. Okay, so that supermarket has been in that corner shop owned by the same family, and it has lasted for 100 years. I was like, wow. So there is a way to build things to last. There's a way that something can affect generations upon generations, and those are the things that we have been looking at, throughout this conversation on the leadership transformation series. Okay, so like I said before, it is not having a momentary influence; it's having sustainable impact. Doing something that outlives you. Okay, so it means that in this context, it is leadership that is rooted and strengthened by accountability. Okay, so I'm going to be saying a lot in terms of accountability and build to last, and what it means, to build an organization that lasts. I believe that organizations that last are accountable. Okay, leaders who last, in different generations, they are accountable. Okay, but most times when we hear accountability, it's different things for different people as well. And I want to bring another dimension of accountability, which maybe many of us have not seen it. And I'm trusting God to, speak to you, inspire you, and then through this conversation, you are going to emerge a better leader. Okay. So when we talk about accountability, what kind of accountability am I talking about? I'm talking about accountability to vision. Okay. So oftentimes when we hear about accountability, it's always about being accountable to people. Okay, I've met people who will come to me and say, I would like to be accountable to you. I've also had people, of course, we are building an accountability platform, through Transformers. But I need you to understand the difference so that by the time you even get involved in the network, or by the time you are being accountable to someone, or people are accountable to you, for you to understand what accountability should be and how you can help people become, more accountable to their vision and not just people. Okay. So when we talk about accountability, we always think about people, being accountable to people, But for me, from the context and the principle we are going to see from the life of Joshua, real accountability is being accountable to vision. Okay, being accountable to the vision that God has placed in your heart. Okay, so much of what we talk about human accountability today, is sometimes influenced by manipulation and subtle control. Okay, most times you discover that people's vision are diverted and taken out of course by others, or people will find a way to try to get others to to live their vision or to build their vision, and not necessarily what God is placing in their heart. Okay, so there is a thin line between real accountability and then submitting yourself under human manipulation, where people are just trying to extend some form of control in the name of helping others become accountable. And I hope that this teaching today will help you find balance in between that. Okay, so why it is important for you to have people that you are accountable to, I also want you to understand that most times, in most cases, you find some certain form of influence and manipulation coming in when accountability is to people and not to vision. Okay, and I want to talk about that first before I talk about accountability to vision. Okay, so when you talk about accountability to senior, most times it can be manipulated. You remember the story in the Bible about the old prophet and the new prophet. Okay, the new prophet, because he was young, just like Joshua. So when I look at the story of the young prophet, I see Joshua, who is young, who is inexperienced, and most times you want to meet somebody who is senior, to say, please, I would like to hold myself accountable to you. I want you to guide me. I want you to, I mean, sometimes I remember as a young person, meeting someone to say, I'm young, I don't even know what to do. I just want you to guide me, show me what to do, tell me. Anytime I come to you, anyone you say that I'm not doing wrong, tell me to stop. Anyone that I'm doing right, encourage me to do it. Those things sound good. Those things are encouraged, but that is not the pattern that is left for us. If we are going to be leaders who are going to thrive, who are going to make a difference, you have to be true and authentic to the vision. And it is very important. So the old prophet ended up deceiving the new prophet. It destroyed the vision of God for his life. It destroyed the move of God that God was about to birth through him, because he depended on his accountability and whatever the old prophet had to say to him. Okay? You can't also be accountable to people. You can't leave your accountability to people. You see that happen in the life of Saul. When Samuel came to Saul, and I was asking him, so why didn't you wait for me to make a sacrifice? Why did you even bring these animals in the first place? You will hear Saul will constantly talk about people. And I will tell you why that happens to you as a leader. Just, flow with me. I know we don't have time, but this foundation is very important. Very, very important. I want you to pay attention. Saul said that is because of the people. You will hear anytime that Samuel was trying to correct Saul about the vision, about what God wanted him to achieve, you always hear Saul talking about the people. The people wanted to sacrifice. The people wanted to celebrate. The people wanted to keep the fat cow so that we can use it to honor God. And someone will say, my friend, are you not getting the point? We are talking about God's instruction for your life. Why? Which one is better? Pleasing God and pleasing people, which one is better? And you need to listen to this, because sometimes there are thin line, between paying attention to people and paying attention to what God has said to you personally. Okay? You also see that difference between Peter. When Peter was stopping Christ, when Christ was talking about his death, how he's going to die on the cross, and Peter came to stop him, okay, to tell him, no, don't say this kind of thing. Why should you do that? Why should you take that step? Why should you take that decision? Jesus had to reprimand him immediately. In fact, he said, Satan, get behind me. Why? He was not trying to be accountable to Peter. He was trying to be accountable to the vision. Most times you find leaders, they feel that they have to be accountable to the people, or they feel that they have to be accountable to the friends or associates or parents or senior people who have gone ahead of them. Why? There is nothing wrong with that. Like I said, we have to be careful, because you can be manipulated by other people's fears. You can be manipulated by other people's presumptions, direction. You can be manipulated by whatever that is influencing people's opinion in your life. Okay? But when your direction or whatever you are building is anchored on the vision and direction that God has placed into your life, you will see that it's going to last. Another example that I can think on top of my head now was Paul. Okay, Paul had a group of accountable partners. Okay, when he was about to go to Jerusalem, he came to a group of prophets, and when he came to the group of prophets, they were praying, and of course, one of the prophets went and collected Paul's clothes, wrapped it on his hands and on his legs, sat down and said, whoever owns this cloth, this is going to be the state of the man when they go to Jerusalem. And everybody started crying. And Saul was like, why are you guys crying? Everybody was saying, no, you are not going to make this journey. You can't make this journey. Pay attention. Pay attention. Is that not a prophecy from God? The prophet gave a prophecy from God that whoever is holding this is going to be in danger. It's like, imagine yourself being in a house and you are worshiping God and prophecy breaks out. And they say that, who is the owner of this phone? Whoever is the owner of this phone, when you step out of this place, you are going to have an accident. Everybody will cry. What will happen naturally to your mind is that you are going to say, no ways, I'm not going to make this journey. But that was not what Paul said. Paul said, no, what are you guys talking about? You guys are breaking my heart. You guys are discouraging me. The Lord has already told me that I'm going to go to Jerusalem. And from Jerusalem, He's going to take me to Rome. See the assignment, see the plans, see the things that God has placed before me. You can't be breaking my heart. Now, the question is, was there a prophecy from God? Yes. Is the person talking a true prophet? Yes. But is there accuracy in the interpretation of that prophecy? No. Because it was infused with human emotions, human fears. And if not that Paul was anchored on the vision, he would have been derailed. He would have aborted that journey out of fear. He would have aborted that journey out of accountability to others. And what would have happened is that he might have missed fulfilling the things that God wanted him to fulfill. Okay, so let me give you a little comparison. Okay, most of us are coming from a religious background. Some of the things I'm saying, might be, having some touch in the way you look at it. And that is why I try to, bring together a comparison that can help you understand deeper what I'm trying to say. So accountability to people and accountability to vision. What is the difference? Okay. This might be a good place for you to write some things down. Okay. When you are accountable to people, usually it is based on the primary motivation for being accountable to people is you are looking for approval, you are looking for affirmation, and sometimes you are trying to avoid conflict. Okay, so because you don't want it to be, if I do this, will I offend someone? If I take this decision, okay, let me go to my leader. Maybe when he speaks to me, there's going to be affirmation, there's going to be an approval, and of course, everybody wants that. It gives you some level of confidence. Okay, but most times what you discover is that when you are accountable to vision, there is an alignment with purpose and divine mandate. There's an alignment with purpose and your divine mandate. Okay, so being accountable to people is nice because you want to find approval, but being accountable to vision gives you more security in terms of aligning yourself with purpose and your divine mandate. So many years ago, I think when I was in the university, I was listening to Sunda Delaja. Sunda Delaja was pastoring a church in Ukraine, and he shared an experience he had with God, where a group of young men, they were about 2, they wanted to start a church. And when they were praying, they felt like coming to Mr. Sunday to talk to him that they want to start a church. So they went to Mr. Sunday. They left their former church, went to Mr. Sunday and the words, telling Mr. Sunday, please, we'd like to start a church. We need your help, we need your support, any kind of guidance. And then Mr. Sunday started asking them, okay, so what about your former church? What's your relationship with your pastor? Did your pastor give you approval and this and that? And then what happened was that their former pastor didn't really give them approval to go and plant a church. And after that conversation, Sunday told them, well, you need to go back to your pastor, resolve everything with him. If not, I'm not going to support you. I won't be part of whatever you are doing. And he discouraged them. And when those young men left Sunday Delaja, they actually felt very discouraged. Okay? And then Sunday Delaja said that night when he now went to pray, God now told him that why did he send those young men away and send them back to their former church? That doesn't he know that he is the one sending them to go and pioneer that church? And so they say, Lord, I didn't know you are the one. And God told him, call them back, help them start that church, and give them all the support they need. When I was listening to that, I said, wow. First, what if Sunday did not hear from God? What if Sunday did not understand, the things that God has revealed to him about those young men? And do you know that those young men, because of lack of human approval and affirmation, would have aborted the things God wanted them to do because they were trying to be accountable to people. Okay, so these are the sides that I want you to understand. Okay, most times when you are accountable to people, you are influenced by their opinions, by their pressure, or by their popularity. Okay, so when you are looking at people and you are trying to be accountable to them, you can be influenced by their opinions. I remember when I wanted to start, when I wrote a book, Power Shift. Okay, I wrote the book Power Shift, and then there's this senior person in my city, Enugu, then that I greatly respect. I greatly respect this man, and I've written the book already. So I went to give him a copy to say, sir, I've written a book. And he was like, oh, wow, awesome. So what's the next plan? I said, well, the next plan is that I want to put together a conversation around the book. So I want to call the conversation Power Shift. He rested down a bit on his chair and said, don't you think that Power Shift is too confrontational? Maybe, try to make it something light and different. I said, sir, so what do you think? He said, why not make it leadership? Maybe something around leadership, or so that you don't sound too confrontational, or people just feels like you are going to be too confrontational. To be very honest with you, he convinced me. I left that environment, hoping to talk to my team that let's change the title of the conference from Power Shift. Let's make it something, maybe leadership, something subtle, And then How did God save my life? I went into a conversation. I went into more like a seminar, and there was what's it called? There was this guy. He's a poet. He stood to have a conversation. And what was the conversation he was having? He stood up and said that we all Nigerians are hypocrites. And then he started talking. This guy was talking, and I was getting shivers. He was talking about life as Nigerians, how we don't stay true to our identity, the things we believe we should do. We cower, change our mind in the face of opposition, in the face of discomfort. And as he kept talking, I just kept telling myself, you are not true to the vision. You are not true to the book. You are not true to the things you want to do. Why do you want to change it from powership to leadership? That was the whole thing that was going into my mind. By the time the young man finished talking, I walked up to him, shook his hand, and told him, thank you, you spoke to me. I know he didn't know what happened. Finally, I had a meeting with my team. I said, okay, we are going ahead with Power Shift. We put it very bold on the billboard, and it became one of the biggest events I had in my city then. Guess who gave me the advice? A senior person that I respect so much. And as young leaders, because you have that feeling of inadequacy, because you have that feeling of doubt, can I do this? Can't I do this? I always want you to understand. Imagine Joshua taking over from Moses. Who are we talking about? You remember who Moses was? Moses is the guy that when he drops his rod, people die. Moses is the guy that raised his rod and parted the Red Sea. Moses is the guy that when he's walking, you see the sun moving, you see the moon moving. There is all kinds of miracle happened, and then Moses is dead. And then it's Joshua. This young guy is supposedly supposed to take over from Joshua. So there's a lot of intimidation, and that is why I tell you guys, you will find constantly in the book of Joshua, more than any other scripture in the Bible, you will hear God say, be courageous, only be courageous, only be strong, only be courageous, because Joshua had a lot of fears stepping into what Moses left behind. That shoe was very big. And many of us as young people, when you want to step up into having national conversations, you don't feel like you measure up. When you want to start out into pioneering a business, pioneering an organization, doing something that nobody has done before, you always feel that you are inadequate, you are not enough, you can't do it. There is that pullback. You tell your friend, they will tell you, no, you can't. You tell your parents, they tell you, no, you can't. Human accountability can always, influence your opinions, most times negatively. So when you are accountable to vision, you are guided by mission, you are guided by values, and you are guided by your long-term direction, what you want to achieve. Okay? Accountability to people gives you short-term peace and acceptance. So you have that temporal peace in your heart, you have that acceptance. Somebody is giving you a pat at the back. Yeah, go ahead, this is good. I think you should do it. Okay? But accountability to vision gives you long-term impact. You are able to see beyond where you are. You are able to see the impact of your actions generationally, not just as a short-term action. Okay? Accountability to people most times is reactive, is driven by what others want or expect. So you usually see, like I shared in my story, people want something, people expect something. So being accountable to people most times, you are going to be reacting to what drives what people expect or what they want to see. Okay? But accountability to vision is more proactive. You are driven by the requirements of the vision. You are driven by the power, the passion that the vision is bringing into your heart. That is what is driving you. Okay? So accountability to people, you may sacrifice principles in order to please others. I've also shared it in my previous story. You find all these things. You sacrifice your principles in order to please others. Okay, you remember the story of the old prophet and the new prophet in the Bible. The new prophet was told by God, don't eat anything, don't talk to anybody. But the old prophet came and said, well, God told me to tell you that you can now eat. Okay, and that was how the young man died. Lost his vision, lost his life, lost everything. Okay, you are likely to sacrifice your principles in order to please others. Okay, but when you are accountable to your vision, you are willing to say no. You are willing to stay on the course because you are thinking in line of vision, not in line of people. This is very important. This is very critical. Okay, people's opinion, their feedback, or their demands, play a lot of role. What do you think about this idea? There's something I want to do. I want to run it by you. A young man even spoke to me yesterday, and was saying that there's something he's thinking of doing. He wants to run it by me. I was saying, oh wow, awesome. We do these things. We think there is humility in it. We think that it's nice. Okay, we are taught to seek advices. Yes, that is beautiful, but you must also be careful who you are having that conversation with, because their feedback, their opinions, their demands can affect your vision. What should drive accountability to vision? God's voice, not people's voice. The vision, the original blueprint. What original blueprint did God put in your heart concerning what you want to do? Okay, let me just quickly run through this. So there is fear of rejection. When you are accountable to people, you are always careful about fear of rejection. Are they going to reject? Are they going to disapprove? What I want to do, is it going to bring conflict? But when you are accountable to vision, you are anchored in clarity and conviction. So you have clarity and then you have conviction. Okay, because you are responding to the vision that God has placed in your heart. And then the final one here in this comparison table is approval may be gained. When you are accountable to people, you might gain approval, but purpose may be lost. Okay, so for instance, when I went to the man I respected so much to ask about the conference I want to hold, he said, yes, this is a noble idea, but change the name. Did I get approval? Yes, I got the approval. But was purpose lost? Yes. Okay. So, but when you anchor accountability to vision, what happens is that purpose is preserved. So let me say it again. Real accountability must be to the vision God has called you to. It must not be to the people. It must not be to events. It must not be to things around you. This is one of the hard decisions you are going to make as a young leader. As a young person who is starting out, these are the hurdles you are going to cross. Okay? Because what will happen, most likely going to happen, is that the Moses in your life is not going to die. If you are serving in a church, your pastor is not going to be dying. Okay? If you are in an organization, the business owner is not going to be dying. Okay? You have been serving in a school, or you have been working in a business, and suddenly you feel like starting your own. What's the next thing you want to do? You want to go and seek approval. You want to go and find out how people can support your vision. I remember when I ran for ACG president. This is going to be the final example. I remember when I ran for ACG president. When God placed in my heart, when I got fully convinced in my heart to go and, some of these things I'm sharing with you guys, why it sounds unique and different, because it's embodied in my story. Okay, I grew up not having a relationship with my dad. Okay, so I met my dad on the sick bed. You have pictures maybe in your house where you took picture with your dad, or where your dad came to pick you from school. I never had those moments. The only imagination I have about my father in my head is him on a wheelchair or lying down on the bed. Okay, so I grew up having that emptiness, having that space of a fatherly figure in my life, and it became an issue for so many years. In fact, I will constantly talk to God. And then because I'm multi-talented and I have giftings in different things, when I approach leaders and say, please guide me, please, help me as a young person, they just end up giving me tasks, giving me responsibility, using me, and nobody is looking into my life, what I have, what I carry. So it became a very big dysfunctionality in my life that I believe even up to today, God is still dealing with me on that. Okay. So what happened was that after God spoke to me, it was clear in my heart. Go ahead, run for ACG president. Okay. The next thing is that I had to look for human accountability, like we are taught. Okay. I met my senior brother then. He washed me down. He said, have you ever been a class rep? Have you ever been anything? And so how can you wake up in your third year? You're not even in your second year, your final year, and you said you want to be ACG president. Oh God, please go and sit down and rest. I don't know who is putting that. You always get all kinds of vision in your head. Okay? Went to my mom, different story. Went to almost everybody around me, different stories, different discouragements, different conversations. Even when I met the person I hope, is going to give me some money, at least, when I launch into, to run for the election, I need some money. And the guy said, okay, well, you can go ahead if you want to, provided you don't come to me for support. I came back home that day, depressed, giving up, and not planning to continue with the vision. And that night, I still felt a small voice of God in my spirit saying, all the people you have trusted, all the people you believe that can help you, have failed you. Now, can you focus on me? Let's get this thing done. And that was how, maybe it's a story for another day, I can even share how God started guiding me with strategies, with principles from day one to the final day when I became successful and I won that election. It was one of my most powerful experiences with God that I can never forget in my life. Okay? So the reason I'm sharing this is that as a young leader, you are going to struggle with, who am I going to be accountable? Who is going to accept me? Who is going to encourage me? Who is going to give me approval? The only approval you need is the vision that God has placed in your heart. Every other thing will fall in line. Every other thing will fall in place, as long as you stay true and stay right to your vision. I want to repeat that again. Real accountability must be vision driven. It must be based on the vision God has placed in your heart and nothing else. Okay? So let's go to the scripture. Let's make it a valid meeting. So how did I get this principle? I got this principle from the life of Joshua in Joshua 13 verse 1. Okay? So this was how the conversation went. In Joshua 13 verse 1, the Bible said that when Joshua was an old man, the Lord said to him, you are growing old, and much land remains for you to be conquered. Oh wow, interesting. Okay, so you are growing old, and much land remains to be conquered. So it means that God is having a conversation with Joshua. Okay, he's saying, Joshua, okay, Joshua, my man, you are getting things done. Okay, you are getting old, but there are yet vision. You remember where we started? In Joshua chapter 1, he said, I'm going to give you this land so that you can give it to my people. Moses, my servant, is dead. I want you to rise up, take these people to the land I've promised them. And he started giving him the scope of the land of the Negev. He started giving him boundaries, scope of the vision. We've talked about that in our previous conversations. So you can see that God's accountability with Joshua, even God trying to hold Joshua accountable, was to the vision. Isn't that exciting to see? God was trying to hold Joshua accountable and is connecting him to the vision. He says, remember, there are lands remaining for you to be conquered. Let me say this. I know I've said it in my previous conversations, but let me say this. One true sign of spirituality is vision. One true sign that you are a spiritual person is the vision in your heart. It's not that you pray. It's not that you fast. It's not that you sleep in church. It's not that you do all kinds of religious things that, many of us ascribe to spirituality. No. One key element of spirituality is vision. Every true Christian must have a talking relationship with God. But the fruit of that talking relationship with God is vision. Every conversation you are going to have with God begins and ends with vision. I hear people talk about how they have conversations with God, where they play with God, where they eat, where they dance, where they sing, powerful experiences. I hope to also have that. But when you look at scriptural principles, whenever God meets a man, the conversation he wants to have with that man is vision. And that is why one of the things that makes me question someone's Christianity or someone's faith, or question whether someone hears from God, is when I interact with a young man or a young lady and I don't see footprints of vision, footprints of what God is leading them to do, footprints of what God is guiding them to do. Most times I will begin to ask questions and question them. Do you really have a relationship with God? Do you really have intimacy with God? Because inside that, every fruit, it's like a husband and a wife. Okay? You can enjoy intimacy for whatever purpose you want to enjoy it. Intimacy was given with God, but intimacy must be able to produce vision. It must be able to produce fruits. It must be able to bring out something, that you can call a creation, a proof of that intimacy. And that is how our relationship with God also works. So every conversation you are going to have with God starts and ends with vision. You can't see any man who truly encountered God that never came out with vision. You must come out with vision. Adam's first conversation with God, vision. Noah's first conversation with God, vision. Abraham's first conversation with God, vision. Jesus' conversation with God, vision. Jesus' conversation with others, vision. Follow me today, I'm going to make you fishers of men. It's all about vision. When he was going back, he said, okay, this conversation I'm giving you guys, start from Jerusalem to Judea to Samaria to the uttermost parts of the earth, is vision. Guess what? When Jesus comes back, the Bible said he's going to reward those who are stayed true to their vision. Good and faithful servant, move to the right. It's all about vision. So that means that what would you rather anchor your life on? Are you going to anchor your life on what is important to God, the most primary concern of God in your life, which is the vision and the calling that he has for you? What would you rather anchor your life? Are you going to anchor it on people? Are you going to anchor it on those who are better than you? Are you going to find yourself always comparing what I'm doing with what others are doing? Which one is better? No. You're going to anchor it based on the vision God has placed in your heart and what God wants you to accomplish. Okay? And that is why I want to encourage you guys, if you've not gone through our e-course, some of you show up every Tuesday, but what we are doing in Transformers is beyond the Tuesday conversations. We have an e-course, and I will encourage you. I know the link, you are going to find the link in the chat box, but I'm going to encourage you to register for the course. Maybe next week we can have people who have gone through the courses come and share their experience. The course is free and is designed to help you to begin to understand the vision of God, the vision that you have for your life, and then to start building on it. Okay, it is a key critical aspect of transformation. Okay, so the conversation we have every day is linked to vision, and see why. Whenever God wants to transform someone, he introduces a vision. If you want to transform a child, anything, whatever you want to change, you want to transform an organization, you want to transform a company, you want to transform a nation, you must introduce the vision element. When I listen to politicians, the first thing I look out for is what vision is he driving, and how is that vision inspiring others. Those are the first key elements I look out for before I start checking other things. I was analyzing a few months ago. We are analyzing some leaders in Nigeria, and I mentioned one northern leader who is a Muslim, and somebody was like, as a Christian, do you know what this man represents? Do you know? I said, no. This conversation is not based on what he represents. This conversation is based on the tenets of good governance. Okay, so look at what he did as a governor. Look at the principles he followed as a governor. Look at some of the indicators, some of the actions he took. Compare it, juxtapose it together with whoever you are. Then you can be able to tell a difference. Okay? So when evaluating leadership, first things I look out for, what is the vision element of what I'm doing? And for you as a leader, you must constantly ask yourself, what is the vision element of what I'm creating, what I'm driving, what I'm trying to build, and how will that inspire others? Okay, so I want to encourage you. Some of you are not sure about your vision, you are not sure about what God is doing in your life, you are not sure about the things you must pursue, you are not sure about your purpose. I will encourage you to register for that course, okay, and be part of what we are doing. Awesome. Okay, so true leaders don't keep fame. They don't keep their eyes on fame. They don't keep their eyes on riches. They don't keep their eyes on resources or success, or even how influential they've become. No, they keep vision before their eyes. That was why God said to Habakkuk, in Habakkuk chapter 2, he said, write the vision, make it plain, so that those who read it may run. Okay, so why? Because what should drive your actions as a leader is vision. So a leader with success never stops or settles. Results do not deceive them. Okay? Their real measure of success is the accomplishment of the vision. And that was why, when God came to Joshua, he said, yes, you've done this, but look, you have not finished. You have not finished. You have not finished. But guess what? For some of us, once we start making money, we build a good house, we buy a new car, we are comfortable, then we have arrived. What drives leadership in Africa? Is it really vision, or when people amass wealth? You see them when they talk about it, when you sit around politicians in Nigeria, across Africa, they just keep talking about what they have. Oh, I just bought a new car. Oh, I just bought a new house. Sometimes it's very boring and nauseating sitting around politicians. Okay, sometimes they tell me that as a politician, you need to mix around. But one day I was having a conversation and we were joking about it, and I told them, when I sit with you guys, I only learn bad things. I said, I only learn bad things. You don't have meaningful conversation. We don't talk about education. We don't talk about economy. We don't talk about youth development. You just sit down here and then we just do chit chat. You take answer calls, tell people you are busy, but we are just doing chit chat here. 3 hours have passed. We are not doing anything meaningful. It's nauseating. It's frustrating. And sometimes it makes people perceive me as someone who is non-social. It's not that I'm non-social, but I'm not cut out for that kind of conversation. Let's discuss vision. Let's discuss blueprints that will translate, rural areas into cities, that will translate, local economies into thriving economies with exports across the world. That is the kind of conversation I want to have. And that is the kind of conversation you must have as a leader. When you have people around you that you have that kind of conversation with, you will constantly see yourself building. You will constantly see yourself growing because you are anchoring yourself on vision and you are never satisfied. So even if you have money, you are never satisfied. Elon Musk is the richest man in the whole world, but he's still talking about building an estate in the moon. Why? That's vision. He's being driven by vision. If Elon Musk was a Nigerian, he would just start running for president now and then build houses in all the states and relax. No, they are moving towards vision. They are moving towards accomplishing something that outlives them. And that is what makes them to build organizations that last. Okay? So being accountable to vision means you are going to have less of distractions. You are going to be aligned with vision even when it becomes uncomfortable. And it means that you are going to submit your personal preferences to divine purpose. Okay? So why some leaders don't last, I'm just going to run through this quickly. I probably have mentioned it in the course of my explanations. Why some leaders don't last? Some leaders don't last because of misalignment from vision. Okay? Misalignment from vision. Like when God rejected Saul, he said, I've rejected this man. Don't pray about him. Forget about him. Get David for me. What was it that made David unique? He said, I've found a man after my heart. What is after God's vision is the conversation, is the vision that is driving what God wants to achieve. Okay? So what makes leaders don't last? Misalignment from vision. Okay? And that is what takes away the trust element of what they are trying to do. People feel like, it's not what we agreed that we are doing again. When I joined, we said we are going to do this. That's not what we are doing. Takes away trust from a leader. Prioritizing visibility over accountability to vision. Okay, so we live in a world of social media influence. Everybody is trending. Brands are trending. And most times you discover that we are no longer paying attention to delivery. We're no longer paying attention to vision. What we are paying attention to those whose brands stand out. So even when you don't have delivery, but you have a strong brand, then you are perceived as a good leader. Okay, you see it all over the world, even amongst politicians. You saw it in the last American election, where you can see people tilting to those who have good brands, those who are able to move the crowd, and not paying attention to leaders that have plans, have results, and that they are going somewhere. Okay, sometimes I look at it, I wonder, I said, what really are people paying attention? Okay, so what it tells you, of course, this is the age that we are living, is that even though you are a visionary leader, build brands that cut across to people so that you have both brand and delivery, and that's what gives you a powerful impact. Okay, substituting gifting for their growth. This is also one of the reasons why leaders don't build to last. Okay, lack of wise counsel and spiritual counsel. So I've discussed that. Even if you have to seek counsel, let me say this to you guys. I never seek advice from any person who doesn't understand God's program for my life. There are few people I talk to when I want to make decisions. There are few friends I talk to when I want to make decisions. And those friends have known me not just as an individual. They have known me to the level that they understand my vision. They understand where God is taking me. And most times, even when I'm sharing things with them, I say, I would like to do this. They will remind me, but this is what God has been saying. This is what you keep telling me God has been saying. Why are you bringing this down? And how does it connect? Those are the kind of people I have conversations with. They understand God's programming for my life. And whenever I mentor a person, whenever I have any kind of relationship with a person, the first thing I try to do, the first thing I try to sense is to understand, what is God saying to this person? What has God been saying to them? What is the vision element of their life, so that I can key in? If not, you are in somebody's life, but you're a distraction. You are trying to get married to somebody. Can you try to find out what is the vision of God concerning that person's life? Okay. Most disagreements in marriage is because usually people have different plans, different visions, different directions, and they are not able to deliver. Okay. So the last thing I want to mention is compromising under pressure. Some leaders don't last because they compromise under pressure. They compromise their vision. So you have something you want to build, but there's pressure here and there, you compromise and then you leave it. So what are the practices that will make your vision last? Write it down. Like God said to Habakkuk, write the vision, make it clear. Write it down, keep it clear and visible. Okay? Then have periodic track alignment. So periodically, evaluate your vision. Okay? Ask yourself, am I still in line? We are building an app. We are building a Transformers app. I've been working with the development team. Hopefully before the end of this year, we are going to have an app. The goal of that app is to help you to keep track of your vision, to keep track of the things. I think there was a session where I showed the app and what it looks like. We've gone far, I think we've done more than half of the app. So I'm hoping that before the end of this year, we are going to launch an app that will give you, some kind of guidance around everything that we've been discussing. So the app is built around your vision, purpose, personal leadership, personal relationship, personal systems, and personal outcomes, to help you drive and become an effective leader. So I'm hoping that before the end of the year, that app will be out. Then it can help you to periodically track what you are trying to do and how you are moving towards God's vision. And the last thing I want to say is stay humble. The first one is write the vision down. Periodically evaluate the vision, just the way God evaluated Joshua in line with his vision in Joshua chapter 13, where we read today. Stay humble. Stay humble. Influence grows as pride dies. Okay? So you are not finished until the vision is accomplished. That was why Jesus said it's finished, because he's finished. He's finished. Okay? And Jesus is our ultimate model. So when you hear him in John 17, he said, I have finished the work you gave me to do. Okay? He's not talking about I have bought a car, I built a house, or I've won an election. No. He said, I have finished the work you gave me to do. In the book of Acts 13, one of my favorite scriptures, Acts 13:36, the Bible talking about David, he said that David served the purpose of God for his generation, and then he now rested and was buried with his fathers. So an analysis of David's life is in line with David serving the purpose of God for his generation and then rested. It means that David is the guy who built to last. No wonder when you talk about Christ, they connect Christ to the throne of David. They connect him, they call him the son of David, because it is the vision that God placed in the heart of David that we are still expanding through Christ. Okay, it's an expression of that embodiment David built to last. Okay, Jesus didn't just fulfill his calling, he was faithful to the vision. Okay, and that was how he became, a global figure today. Christianity keeps growing, people's lives keep transforming, there's still expansion going all over the world because a leader stayed true to the vision, finished, and built it to last. Things I want to share with you, I want to leave with you as we end is, what vision has God given you? What vision has God given you? Are you leading from the place of vision, or are you leading from the place of comparison? Most people start things because they see people doing it. Oh, AI, oh, AI, oh, this one, oh, IT. No. What vision has God placed in your heart? Are you staying true to that vision with clarity? And then, how are you aligned with the vision that God has placed in your heart for this season? Okay, so what you are doing right now, what you are planning to do, what you are engaging with, how is it aligned with what you believe God wants you to do? Okay, it's good to have a good job. Okay, you can have a job because you want to meet your needs, but job is not a vision unless that job is part of the vision. Okay, so you must constantly ask yourself, am I aligned to the things God wants me to do, the things God wants me to establish? And that is what I leave you with. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you are blessed. I'm going to see you guys next week. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you for listening. Please do follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok at Transformers Global LC, on Twitter X at T Global LC,